Welcome to Oh Say Can You See? Today is June 1st, 2016. We are doing talking about the war on voting. We are here every first, third, and fifth Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock from now on, live, even though it's 8 o'clock right now. Don't get confused. Starting June 5th, we will be on at 7 p.m. live the first, third, fifth Wednesday of the month.
June 15th.
Starting June 15th. And reruns are, as always, every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Our war on voting, 16 years ago, which is the most prominent one in my mind, very, severe election fraud and voter suppression, most notably in Florida. But now we're dealing with some of the same issues with the primaries against Bernie Sanders, even though back then it was against Al Gore, and then we had issues again in 2004. I'm going to bring up some of the reminders from the 2000 election and the 2004 election. I'm going to show a few video clips about pointing out exactly what they did then. And all these videos were made before the election that's going on right now, and you will see some severe similarities, machine fraud and pulling people off voter registrations and whatnot. And tonight with me, I have Lily Beardsley and Stephen Durst and Mark Zapatowski. Does anyone have any opening comments that they want to share about the war on voting?
Well, let's start with the exit polls.
Okay.
For people who don't understand what's going on, the proof is in the pudding. It is in the exit polls. The discrepancy between the results that were official and the results of the exit polls show a discrepancy in Hillary's favor that is a near statistical impossibility. 485 million to 1 that you would have these results. And people say, well, exit polls, what are exit polls? Well, exit polls are used by the UN to test whether elections are fair worldwide. And in these election polls in state after state and the United States, the Democratic side has shown that the election polls, the exit polls, are way off, all in Hillary's favor. The exit polls show that Hillary is somehow getting many more votes officially than she's getting from actual voters. And these same exit polls are done on the Republican side, and they come out fine. They come out within the margins of error. Whereas in third world countries, when they use election polls to invalidate elections, it might only be 3-4% off. Of the election polls in places like Mississippi have been 15% off. So people say, well, it's a very close race, right? But actually Bernie's been winning it quite handily, and it has been being stolen. We're going to have to talk about a whole range of things, from voter suppression to hacking of electronic voting machines, to registration tampering, to blocking of poll places, to refusal to count provisional ballots, to the Democratic Party announcing the wrong time for elections, closing voting booths as they're doing in Puerto Rico right now. There's supposed to be about 1,500 polling places in Puerto Rico. Last week, they announced there would only be 500 polling places, and when they made the announcement, they said that the primary was on the day after it actually is. These are all attempts to suppress the vote, and the media is also involved in this by constantly harping on this idea that Bernie can't win when actually he is winning.
President.
They're trying to suppress the vote.
Those
Chris
checks and
Matthews went
balances
so far
were
as
about to
say
be tested.
That all the networks, including MSNBC, which he works for, are intending to announce at 5 p.m. on June 7th, when the polls close in New Jersey, that Hillary has won because they're conflating superdelegates with pledged delegates, and also in order to depress the vote for the last 3 hours in California and the last 2 hours in Montana and North and South Dakota.
So an exit poll, some people might not know what they are. When people leave the polling place, there's a exit pollster who is a paid professional person who is just trying to ask them if they will answer how they voted. And so,
why?
yeah, so that's what it is. And to say, oh, well, polls can be inaccurate. This is a different kind of poll. And
And that's how they
should
find
not-
demographics about
they-
who voted for who as well.
Right, and that's the thing. And they're saying, oh, well, these people, they voted for Hillary, but they came out and they said they voted for Bernie. That's what happened.
idiotic.
But the
Why would they do
Republicans aren't doing that. And why would they do that? Are we to believe that Republican voters are more honest than Democratic voters? I think it's rather the Democratic Party that at this point is even less honest than the Republican Party.
Actually, there have been some problems with exit polls in the Republican Party because people don't want to own up to the fact that they voted for Trump. There's been way lower, people have been saying they're not voting for Trump, but then Trump ends up doing way better in those states. So I don't know, actually, yeah, but I don't know if you really want to put that much. There is a margin of error that you do have to take into account when looking at exit polls in general.
Yeah, but it should be a very small margin of error.
Right, and these are the double digits right now between Hillary and Bernie, and that's uncalled for. The UN and any other country would have taken over the election by now. I mean, wasn't it like anything more than 1%, or is it 3%?
Right, right.
They go in and they stop the voting and say, this is wrong.
Right.
But in America, we're always right. Even if things are going horribly.
The wronger we are, the righter we are.
Well, I want to play my my first roll-in if it's ready. It's from Hacking Democracy. It's just a couple minutes showing back in, I think this was 2004, some of the things that were happening, why people couldn't vote and why the vote was coming out wrong. We don't have any volume out here.
Is that an answer?
We have no volume out
Okay,
here.
let's see if I can follow instructions.
We have
The world watches our great democracy function.
All right.
You took it away again.
When the greatest democracy on the face of the planet gets to show the world how we work.
It would be nothing better for our system, for the election to be conclusively over tonight, so that I think it's going to be me, so I can go on and lead this country.
The politicians said everything was fine, but it wasn't. The machines weren't just insecure. They malfunctioned, leaving thousands without a vote.
And now, nobody knows.
On Election Day in 2004, we, like a lot of other organizations,
really
had a
hear
voter
it.
helpline where people could call in and let us know the problems that they were experiencing. We logged in over 200,000 calls, and many of those people left a voice recording of what they actually experienced.
When I made my selection, it jumped from the square that I touched to the square above.
They said half the machines were broken.
There was one voting booth, one, for 3,000 people.
7.5 hours in line to vote.
And they put two machines in another area with only 300 people and gave us two machines with 3,000 people.
And they have a lot more in the outlying, richer communities, and they don't have lines there.
I'm hardly around the first of the three rooms that I have to wait. The line is out to the street.
4 to 5 hour wait, you can't do. You can't do that.
Women with children having to stand outside in the pouring down rain.
There were a lot of people who ended up not being able to vote because they just couldn't stay in those lines. There were a lot of elderly people there.
It is not the people who do the choosing. Everything is so fixed. It's so fixed.
is a calamity going on out there about how elections are conducted in this country. And it results in less voter participation and potentially a lack of accuracy in who's either elected or what decisions are made in the polling places.
As the precincts closed,
All right, well, that was just a short snippet about what went on in 2004. And at the beginning of it, I don't know if you all heard, but Bush was declaring himself, when I win, I mean, I think I'm going to win. And as we know that before the election, Kerry said that, you know, if anything's contested, if any of the votes seem improper, if anything seems wrong while everyone's voting, well, I'm going to stick to it and contest it, unlike they did in 2000 and gave up. Supposedly gave up. They were made to, but then as soon as what was it, less than 24 hours after the polls closed, he said he just conceded.
Yeah, even though it was obvious that the machines had been hacked in Ohio, and in fact the CEO of Diebold, which made the machines that were hacked in Ohio, had openly said before the election that he intended to deliver it to George Bush.
The election, yeah.
The election.
He was the manufacturer, yeah.
So
of the machines, right?
The election fraud that happened in Florida in 2000 was the cause for bringing in these electronic voting machines, and that the electronic voting machines have now become the easiest, most reliable way for election fraud to be done by establishment candidates.
There is a book, I forget the author, but the title is, was the 2004 election stolen? Conclusion of the author was yes, and it was because of the election polls. You did see...
Exit polls, right?
Yeah, the exit polls. The exit polls indicated that the result shouldn't have been what it ended up being, that George Bush shouldn't have won, the Republicans shouldn't have made gains in the Congress. And at the time, the media was saying, well, how can this be? Our exit polls have gotten better and better. They're fantastic now, and you know, they haven't been wrong in a very long period of development. And so that was the clue.
Exit polls are reliable.
Right.
They're just getting sneakier ways of you know, the new machinery, and they can just program it from afar now. You know, some of it's hooked up to the internet. Yeah, and in some of the videos I was watching, some guy said, you know, if you know the system, all you have to do is touch the screen in a certain spot, and it'll close the program that it's running, the votes, and then you can hack it right there. You know, in 30 seconds, he was saying that he did it.
And these huge lines in poor neighborhoods, like we saw there in Ohio, in Arizona, and other places in this election cycle, that has been done even more. And that's why I mentioned Puerto Rico. The closing of 1,000 of the 1,500 polling places is exactly what happened in Pima County, right?
Something similar happened in Rhode Island.
Yes, in Rhode Island they did the same thing. There was an open primary. Bernie was surging way ahead. They closed 2/3 of the polling places.
And it's something that happens.
Make people wait and give up.
Yeah, that happens in the, like you said, in the poorer communities, because they know they assume who they're going to vote for, and then they just get rid of those people, their ability to vote. The older people, poor people, people that have to work during the day and get to the polling place at 6 o'clock anyway, and if it closes at 7, then they're just, everyone's stuck in line for hours and hours and hours, or they give up and go home because they have to make dinner and take care of their families or go to work the next day.
That's
so.
why they wouldn't allow...
Or the polls just closed with them in line.
Yeah.
That's why they wouldn't allow 127,000 to vote in Brooklyn. They figured that Brooklyn would go overwhelmingly for Bernie.
Yeah.
Yeah, in New York they were taking people off the, or unregistering people, and there was like a huge court case over it. A lot of the people tried to sue, but by the time they got the case rolling, it was basically too late. You had to go through a whole bunch of hassle that most people just couldn't do to get yourself back on the voting rolls.
Mm-hmm. That's
well,
what they want.
There were people who showed up and weren't on the rolls and were being told, take a provisional ballot, or they would go actually to a judge
Yeah.
and get an affidavit ballot and an order saying, you have to let me vote. And so they'd take the affidavit ballots, they ended up throwing them all away. They weren't counted.
They decided, yeah, they were too late. Computers now, what I looked up, do 80% of our voting right now. Well, it did as of the 2004 election. So I assume that much more now. I mean, where I vote, I don't have a touch screen, but a scanner reads my ballot after I put it in. So I mean, that's pretty much a computer counting it, just like, and so.
Right, the computer counts it, and you wouldn't know unless you went into the programming, like they did in Chicago when there was an audit after the primary in Illinois, and they found that the machines had indeed been hacked and were programmed to erase Bernie Sanders votes and to give Hillary votes. In Massachusetts, for instance, which Hillary won by 2%, well, there were some backwards places that still had paper balloting. When they went in and looked and audited these places, they saw that Bernie won by 17%, even though the official count, recounts of the paper ballots showed that the official counts were off by 17%.
Doesn't it remind you of the 2000 election where Gore had negative votes?
Right. Well, you can sometimes see that if you're actually watching some of these returns.
They went down.
You look up on the screen, and all of a sudden Bernie will lose 1,000 votes.
Yep.
Or there'll be a county in which Hillary is behind by 30,000 votes, and all of a sudden, right at the last minute, 30,000 votes for Hillary will show up, just like what happened in Wyoming. People have made a lot of jokes about it. It's like, oh well. Yeah, Bernie got 56% of the vote in Wyoming, and Hillary got more delegates. Well,
Yeah.
you know, that's because of their whole thing of counting superdelegates when they shouldn't, and conflating
And
things like that.
It's hard to audit those machines that count the votes because the people who own the machines call their proprietary information rights, and so they're like, yeah, you can't know how they work. They count your votes for the whole country, and they decide who the president is, but I don't want people to steal my ideas, so I'm just gonna not let you know how they work. Have fun with that.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a
it's very, very difficult to even audit these elections to find the fraud in the first place. And a lot of these big corporations, well, they're more likely to want an establishment candidate to win.
Well, yes, indeed. We can see the lengths they're going to prevent Bernie from winning a nomination that he is winning.
Yeah, I would propose that Hillary has not won these primary elections. Based on that, I think that there's a good case to be made that the party has left the Bernie supporters that essentially they represent the real Democratic Party because they're not disenfranchising the voters of the country. So
to be fair to Hillary, she does have quite a few supporters.
Well, I don't doubt that she has supporters, but she's winning through a kind of voter suppression election fraud. If that's the case, then the real candidate becomes Bernie, and that should be declared. They should walk out of the convention and declare him the real Democratic candidate. This is, I think, the scenario that should take place.
Well, it all depends. I mean, there's still 2 months to the convention with Hillary's problems.
Indictment
even
or
major
no?
news sources are saying that the Hillary campaign is in free fall and that there's panic amongst the establishment Democrats, and you can definitely see it when they're on TV. Barbara Boxer was babbling today that Bernie's crowds, they don't mean anything, and we've seen things like this before, and Hillary is the real choice of the people, and look at the math. They're always look at the math, but we're in an abusive relationship where nobody wants to admit that we're being beaten up, and there's the media is in a conspiracy of silence to act as if the election fraud is not happening.
Right, the major media. But we've come perhaps to a tipping point where the internet media, the non-standard media, is becoming more important than the legacy media. Maybe that's why
We have a
Bernie's
caller. Is it Jill? Hello, Jill. Do you have a question or comment for us?
All we have is squealing here. There's something wrong with it.
Try to speak.
Yes, my question is, what do you think about online voting?
What do you think of online voting? Thanks
Oh.
for your question.
I think that it would. I think we need actual we need actual physical voting product, I think, so that it can be counted by people. I mean, if it can be hacked inside of a computer, it can be hacked inside of a computer network.
Yeah, but there's no reason why people can't just change ballots or throw them away, or ballots can't get lost.
It's harder.
It's not any harder, actually. I watched just recently a documentary, and it was 4 women all working together, and the votes were kept in a box with 2 locks on it. With a pair of bolt cutters, you could have just thrown all the votes away, and nobody would have ever known.
And it happens, and people have been caught doing it.
Yeah.
So
there was
it's
one
really
caucus where all the ballots, a Hillary supporter grabbed them and tried to run out of the, run away with them, and it was caught in the parking lot.
It's no different from paper ballots and online ballots. Both of them are very insecure.
Well, you have to have how do you call it, a receipt for your ballot.
There you go.
There are definitely ways of doing it.
See, in Florida, they had the Republican team and they had the Democratic team, and they would be like staring at each other, and they would have to agree on every paper ballot. And so, if it's not a situation where the party controls the entire apparatus of voting, one party or the other, it's much harder to do it with actual paper ballots. You could actually hold an election. Well, it's okay to disagree, but I would explain why it is that I think that the paper ballots are more secure. You could have an honest election crew conduct an election, but you could have one person be able to hack the results that no one would see in the room. They might be in a room somewhere in the city or in the state or in the country managing to do that. And you can't do that with thousands or millions of paper ballots. I think that it's harder to hack a paper ballot election. It's just harder. That's my opinion.
Only 25% of the country even votes with a paper ballot anymore anyway.
But we could, because we have the technology.
Yeah, we have paper. We still have paper.
I would rather have hanging Chad controversies than what we've been going through.
And even the hanging Chad were the result of a design that was meant to create that ambiguous result. I mean, we can design paper ballots. We can have voting by mail. We can have all sorts of ways of verifying votes and checking votes in the end. The reason that we don't is because the establishment does not want fair elections for the same reason they don't want those people in poorer neighborhoods to be able to vote.
They find ways to make voting harder for everyone by claiming voter fraud, but actually people fraudulently trying to vote is so minuscule that the amount of people whose vote is being suppressed way outnumbers the amount of people who are trying to fake their votes. I think that they need to make voting easier in general.
And so does Bernie Sanders. What we need is universal registration. We need open primaries. We need voted by mail, and we need election day holidays. And Bernie has already written all the legislation for all these things. The solutions to these problems have been known, but the political culture has a vested interest in keeping things the way that they are, because our political parties do not represent people democratically. The whole thing is based on a cynical plan to disenfranchise and discourage people to the point of despair, so that they won't even try anymore to stop the oligarchy from running roughshod over democracy.
Well, that's what most people already are afraid of, the government anyway. So voting's just one more thing for them to be afraid of.
Right, if you had to wait for 4 hours when you went to vote last time, maybe this time you don't even leave your house because you have to work in 2 hours and you think there's no point in waiting if you're not going to be able to vote anyway, regardless of whether there's a long line this time. If it happened last time or if anything happened, or if you felt like your vote wasn't counted, you're probably not even going to bother next time. And there goes another voter who just doesn't feel safe using this system, which I think is ridiculous. It should be much easier to vote. You shouldn't have to wait in a 6-hour line.
You should be able to vote by mail.
Yeah.
And there's no real reason that one shouldn't be able to vote online if it's verifiable and there's a paper trail.
Correct. What would be
I
a
mean,
paper trail?
Well, the same way you do with credit cards. And if someone is doing something weird with your credit card, and the credit card company goes, say, hey, something weird's happening here. And if something like that happens, and oh my God, this person, they voted twice, or this person's dead, or something like that. They could go, oh, wait a second, who is this? These things can more or less be traced.
They can be traced, yeah.
It's possible to do this. We can do this. We have the technology, as you said. We have paper, we have mail, we have ways of verifying. We can audit things, but even in this case where the audits were done in Illinois, and even where the judge said this county has to vote again because they did not even have ballots for the people who came. In college towns, the judge said, well, you got to vote again. Well, Bill Clinton's good old girlfriend, this anyway, the Attorney General of Illinois, she just squashed the judge's order and said there will be no re-voting anywhere in the state. And even when the audit showed that the machines were indeed erasing Bernie Sanders votes and delivering non-existent votes to Hillary, they said, well, this is just a routine audit and it's not going to change the outcome and we're not going to do anything about it.
But why do they only have voting on one day anyway? It should be much easier. You should be able to come in on a long stretch of time. And you should have the day off, honestly, because voting is your, I guess, civic duty, I guess. And you should have ample chance to.
What about mandatory voting where everyone is, first of all, automatically registered when they turn 18, and then they're fined, let's say, $20 if they don't vote. But there's an option on the ballot that says,
no
I don't care.
Candidate.
Yeah, that says none of the above or something like that.
Or no acceptable candidate.
Well, that's true. Isn't that how they do it in Australia? And it's worked quite well. It's fairly easy to get a waiver. Instead of paying the fine, you can just say, well, I had a religious thing, I don't do it. Or, I live way out in the boondocks and I don't want to. You can do it by mail. There should be options, but universal registration makes a lot of sense.
I agree too.
Mainly, registration tampering has been one of the major ways that the Clinton campaign has distorted election outcomes.
Right, they can't take you off the voter rolls if everybody's on them.
And that doesn't even end up in the exit polls because these are people who are turned away.
Right. Yep, exactly.
And the numbers are stunning. So when you hear Hillary Clinton say she's got 3 million more votes, besides the fact that that doesn't account for the way caucuses signify larger voting blocks, or the way there is way too much going on here to say, oh, the math favors Hillary, so Bernie should drop out, which is part of the whole establishment idea of tamping down voter turnout and producing fraudulent results that are to the liking of their corporate bosses.
Do we have a second roll-in? We would like to see that right now, please. This again is the 2004 recount in Ohio. There were a lot of irregularities in that election as well. And just the authorities to be were suppressing the recount even.
Well, actually, Ohio is the particular state that the Diebold voting machines were installed specifically, and people were worried about them for a long time leading up to that.
Under Ohio law, however, you must first hand count a random 3% sample. You are only required to recount all the votes if that sample doesn't match the computer results.
Tell me how you feel about this today.
Well, it's exciting. Like you said, it's part of history. You know, it just We do recounts all the time. It's not that big of an issue for us. It's just for the public to see it.
Recounts are not just for the public to see. The public is meant to check that the election results are correct. After all, it's their vote. Almost immediately, the observers suspected that someone had tampered with the ballots.
It seems like all the Bush and the Kerry seem to be like clumped together. So there might have been some pre-sorting.
Somehow those cards were manipulated so that they were grouped. And I don't know anything about how that happened. Nobody's been able to answer that question for me.
We've got about 2 more hours worth of work on hand-counted ballots.
And that's it?
And then we'll continue to run through the tabulation machine. And they're starting to inspect poll books, and everything's going very well.
Great, thank you. And I did manage to capture all the election officials saying everything's running smoothly, everything's going perfectly. So whenever they say that, you know, they've done something to make certain of that.
Later, the county prosecutor charged that staff had counted a large number of precincts in secret before the public recount. Then they kept back the ballots that didn't add up, giving the citizens a 3% sample that wasn't random and wasn't legal.
What's the process by which the 3% of precincts for the hand count will be done?
Just 3% is a random pick to make the
how do you do the random pick?
To make the number.
Yeah.
We just pick. We're just trying to get to the number.
Okay.
And who's the person that makes that decision?
Ms. Draper and her staff.
Yeah.
And her
You do?
staff.
So it's not really truly random then?
Our random is our random.
Right. And that we have that option to select.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, we've always selected. This department has always selected what precincts we're going to use.
Jackie Maiden later stated that she had been following the normal procedure in pre-sorting the ballots. However, she also said that to her knowledge, there was no discarding of any precincts which did not add up, and she did not believe this had occurred. But the other 97% of the ballots were never recounted, and no one knows if the software had added those votes correctly.
The recount is nothing but a charade. It's a complete and utter waste of time. It's a bit of theater, if you will, and it was done, in my opinion, to ensure that there was never an actual recount conducted, but more importantly, to ensure that there was never an investigation into the underlying allegations of voter suppression and election fraud that took place.
One of my main concerns on that is the people that are running the voting booths, the precincts, they have all their own ideas of who they think should win, so they're gonna maybe suppress certain people just on their own without it being necessarily party affiliated, you know, like not coming down straight from the candidate, but just their own idea. Oh, this is who I want to win, so we're, you know, like running out of Democratic ballots and such things like that, you know.
Well, things like that are planned. By the
and
party.
planned, yeah.
Not all of it may not even be conscious. Like if you're, let's say you're a Democratic, you're Democratic leaning and you're running the election, and you see that you're running out of Republican ballots. If they were Democratic ballots, maybe you'd run and get more, but you know you're really busy, so you just let yourself run out. You know, you know what I mean? You're not on purpose suppressing their vote. You're just maybe not doing all that you could.
Or even harassing people that, you know, they have a preconceived idea of who that person might vote for, so just giving them a hard time. Oh, well, this isn't enough ID. I need a different ID, and, you know, they can just decide that on their own right then and there.
Oh yeah, that's how Jim Crow worked to suppress votes. And this Florida was a good example of a Jim Crow-like registration tampering that was the purging of the voter rolls in Florida was done with a list provided by the state of Texas to Florida and of felons, and the Florida under Jeb Bush to ensure that George Bush won Florida, they scrubbed the names of people living in Florida who had names like the names that they got from Texas.
Yeah. Last names.
And African American like names. They also
30,000.
They also sent out cards telling people the wrong time to vote, the wrong place to vote, and put warnings on there going, oh, and if you owe child support or you have any tickets or outstanding warrants, you may not want to go vote because you could get arrested.
And when you were talking about the thing where they were matching up names to felons, the names weren't, or like the matches they did weren't even that close matches.
No, they
like
weren't.
there would be like James Williams, and he would match to John Williams Sr. And they'd be like, it's close enough.
That's
whatever.
close enough, drop them.
Right, drop them out. And even people who were dead, or people would be matched up with people who were dead, people who didn't even live anywhere near where they had lived, people who were committing crimes in the future, people whose names didn't even have the same amount of, initials. They were just, if they could get a close enough match, you were scrubbed.
Right.
When I lived downtown in what's considered a poorer neighborhood, I lived there for 6 years, and my voter registration, where I've had to vote, changed almost every single election. And not only that, but where I had to vote was almost a mile out of town, not on a bus route.
So that was for everyone at the Morton House?
Yep. Actually, half the Morton House would vote at one place one time, and the other half of the Morton House would vote at another place at another time. My friend ended up voting on Lafayette Street, and I voted on Coit. The next time I voted on Lafayette Street, and he voted on Coit. And I know where you live. You vote downtown at Westminster Church still?
And I have for about 16 years.
Which would have
at
been
least.
3 blocks away from where I lived, but is like a half a mile from where he lives.
Right, and it has not changed.
Why would they have a voting place that close?
My neighborhood was being yuppified all those years.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very frustrating, and every couple months I'd get a new voter registration in the mail. I'd be like, I didn't move, nothing changed. Did they do some gerrymandering or something?
Well, there's plenty of gerrymandering.
But then a couple months later, I'd get another one with the previous place on it. I was like, every couple months or so, I'd be getting a new voter registration.
Well, let's look at this. If they weren't afraid of democracy, they wouldn't do so much to suppress it.
Right.
And if Bernie weren't really winning, the Democratic National Committee wouldn't have to pull out all the stops to stop him. And we see it all from the way the media deals with the issues, an attempt to suppress votes or depress votes, the registration tampering, the e-voting machine hacking, provisional ballots being dropped and not counted, the exit polls. This is a revolutionary moment.
Mm-hmm. That's why
they keep telling us that you gotta follow the numbers. Well, they're telling us 2 + 2 = 5. If we accept that, we're finished as a democracy.
That's why I continue to say that in Philadelphia, the Democrats who are for Bernie and for a real sense of the whatever democracy we have left and whatever there is of the Constitution we have left, need to declare Bernie the actual winner and just leave the convention and leave the party and declare themselves the party and him the candidate of the actual Democratic Party. These other people are pirates.
Well, the Green Party
criminals, traitors.
Says they're willing to accept Bernie on their ticket, and polls show that he would beat Trump and Hillary handily.
People are afraid to vote third party because everyone tells them you can never win, you can never win, you can never win, you can never win.
That's why they've been saying that about Bernie from the beginning, and these same people have been saying it about Trump too. And it's looking to me like Trump could beat Hillary. They've been saying Hillary's inevitable. She can't even beat Bernie without cheating massively.
The stigma of going into an election as a third party candidate would really be essentially a killer. That's why I think the party needs to split and they need to declare themselves the actual Democratic Party.
The real Democrat.
And then that way also he's not violating his pledge not to run as a third party candidate. Because, if people are criminals and they're stealing the election from you as the candidate and the American people as well and stealing their Constitution, then you need to fight back. You need to declare yourself
the actual
party,
back?
the legitimate party.
because the Congress aren't going to stop this voting system because that's how they got elected in the first place.
Right.
Who do we turn to?
You know what everyone always said?
Perhaps to the streets?
Everyone always said the Soviet Union, they're so repressive they can never fall. Well, millions of people stood up at the Velvet Revolution, the Berlin Wall fell. It happened there, it can happen here.
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, if they're going to deny the election to us, if they're going to deny the right to choose, then taking massive protests to the street in a revolutionary moment is what needs to happen.
People between July 4th, beginning on July 4th, in all the parades, there should be big Bernie contingents across the country, and we should continue demonstrating between July 4th and all through the convention. And if the convention is bad and dirty as we think it is, I think it's quite likely that the Bernie contingent will get up and walk out.
I don't think it needs to be just Bernie people. I mean, this has been going on since 2000.
Well, Bernie people are the ones. Bernie people are the ones who are awake.
Right, but I mean, way before we had Nixon, cheating, trying to find out what their.
I think it's gotten worse.
Nixon was cheated out of an election in 1962.
The Bush family.
It has gotten a lot worse.
The Bush
this
family
is worse
took it
than 2000. They took
to
it
a new
further
extreme.
than we've ever seen.
Exactly.
And now Hillary's following the Bush example.
Yeah, she's following Joseph Stalin's idea. It doesn't matter who votes; it matters who counts the votes.
Do we have a caller?
Or maybe since the
I just want to remind everybody that it is a live call-in, but be patient because we're getting a little bit of feedback from the calls here in the studio, but
not the kind of feedback we want. It's unintelligible feedback. See, there we go again.
But the number is 616-459-4881.
Okay,
Do we have a caller?
All right. Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, Rick.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your feelings are if Bernie doesn't get the nomination. Would you vote for Hillary if she picked either Bernie or Elizabeth Warren as her VP? Hello? Hello?
I did hear your question about Hillary, if she chose Bernie or Elizabeth Warren as the VP. I don't think Bernie would go for that, but even if Elizabeth Warren did, what I would do is looking at the actual fascistic sort of actions that Hillary's camp has seemed to have been responsible for in terms of this denying people their vote and stealing an election. I say she's shown her colors, and I can't vote for her. I can't vote for her. I can't vote for Trump because he seems to be playing with Hitler-like, racist signals. But I can't vote for Hillary either.
The polls that show Hillary and Trump in a dead heat right now, they're both getting about 40%. That means 20% of people are saying they're not going to vote for either of them. The polls show that Gary Johnson just now is getting 10% of the vote. That means there's another 10% of the vote that are saying that they would support Jill Stein or the Green Party, or perhaps they're talking about writing Bernie in. I think that this dynamic is going to rise. If the Democrats nominate Hillary Clinton, this will be the end of the two-party system as we know it, because people are falling out.
Yeah, people are really tired of having to pick between Hillary and Trump. I saw heard of a recent poll where there was two options, Hillary and Trump, and I think it was anywhere from 9 to 13% of people wrote in nobody, even though that wasn't an option. They hated both of those candidates so much that they wrote their own option in because they hated both of them. And I think they should Hillary or even Trump should do more to try and pick up those voters, because that's a large percentage of the population.
I don't think they can do much to pick up those
Yeah,
voters
at this
because
point
of
they've
what
kind
they've
of.
done or said.
Yeah, at this point they've kind of messed up, but.
They can both only go down. I mean, it's.
Yeah, the more people, like this is anecdotal, of course, but I'm taking AP US Government this year, and there was a fair amount of Hillary supporters in our class this year. But the more people learned about Hillary, the less they liked her, and there's hardly anyone in the classroom who still supports her. The more people learn about her as a person and as a candidate, they dislike her.
And then learn about government in general and decide what's good for you and what isn't.
That's quite interesting that you say that, because it's a fact that Sanders' national polling numbers for approval rating are higher than Hillary's, and they're higher than Trump's, and so they're going higher.
Sanders is the most liked senator right now.
Yes, and actually his approval ratings are higher than any presidential candidate since they've been doing this sort of polling.
So if she becomes the nominee...
He is the most popular candidate of all time.
If she becomes the nominee of the Democratic Party, there's the very embarrassing and strange situation of having a candidate who's far more popular with the American people being rejected for one whose poll numbers are going down because her supposed fraudulently or supposedly legitimately gained, but in fact fraudulently gained election results are in her favor.
Oh, and we haven't even talked about all the irregularities in finance, how the Hillary Victory Fund and the Clinton Foundation and the laundering of money through state parties and the actual bribing of people, the use of super PACs to harass and attack Bernie supporters online. Even while that's to correct the record, the Hillary campaign has coordinated with that super PAC to do that. They're claiming a loophole that says, well, we can't do it to do advertising. But this isn't advertising because these are individuals actually attacking other individuals. It's not the same, they claim.
Think about who runs the actual electoral system to begin with. Who's campaigning, who's making sure that everything's done right, who's the big overseer of all this?
Well, on the Democratic side, it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Exactly.
Right now, the Democratic, a caucus in the Democratic Senate are split on whether to throw her under the bus as a sop to Bernie people, but the damage has already been done. It doesn't matter whether she stays or goes. The real problem right now, and the thing they won't compromise on, is Malloy and Frank on the Rules Committee, because if the Rules Committee changes the rules so that the superdelegates vote first, the superdelegates don't have to vote individually. They'll just say, well, here's a block of superdelegates, it's over. You guys might as well just go
back
home.
on that finance thing, I know we're a little bit past it.
Yeah.
But some people don't... Lord, sorry.
Don't aim for that.
Oh, sorry. Some people donate money just to the Democratic Party, not to a specific candidate. And I've read that in a lot of counties, they're supposed to distribute the money equally to both candidates. Some going to that, some going to this person, some going to that person. In a lot of counties, Bernie is not receiving anywhere the amount of money he should be, and Clinton's campaign is getting a lot more of the money that was donated to the party to be split up equally is going mainly to Hillary Clinton's campaign. So, I mean, she's getting a lot more funding than Bernie is at this point.
And
a man named Douglas Smith is running against Dimash. He will be the Democratic candidate because the Democrats didn't field anybody else. He went out and personally got the 1,500 signatures he needed to run, and got nothing but discouragement from the local party because he's a Bernie Sanders supporter. Douglas Smith to beat Amash in Grand Rapids, and the Democratic Party is not helping him because he's a Bernie Sanders supporter.
I've been watching what he's been posting on Facebook, and I agree with pretty much everything he's been saying.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen,
I haven't met him yet, but
Stephen was, I believe you were told by him that he was asked, it was kind of demanded of him that by party officials that he take down his Bernie supporting materials. I mean,
And
how
that-
can they do that?
Well, they said, well, if you want any help from us, then you're going to have to be
They've taken
for
sides.
Hillary.
I mean, you can't do that.
You
I mean,
can't
not
deny it.
legitimately.
No. Well, that's another thing that, runs our campaigns is money. If you're not getting, people to support you by giving you money, and that's how, the lobbyists work. They say, well, I'll give you a certain amount of money if you say this about your campaign, and then we'll all be happy. And, this guy sounds like, along with Bernie's line, is doing the right thing and just playing by his ideologies and sticking to his guns and not letting himself be influenced by outside parties that aren't good for the people.
Oh, here's some breaking news that we're going to discontinue the exit polls because it's
heard
becoming
that.
too embarrassing. But today, the American Democracy Election, Institute for American Democracy Election Integrity has arranged for the Columbia Institute of Contemporary Journalism to conduct exit polls in California.
Good.
They're asking for donations and crowdsourcing to help pay for it. So go online, find the American Democracy Election Integrity Institute or the Columbus Institute of Contemporary Journalism. Look for California exit polls and invest in democracy. We're not going to get another chance. If Hillary Clinton, who has made Comcast the main sponsor for the Philadelphia Convention, which is the main enemy of net neutrality, we are not going to get another chance like this.
Stephen, what was the rationale for discontinuing the exit polling?
Oh, the election's over. It doesn't matter anymore. Who cares?
Correct.
I mean, but this has been a standard practice. All elections have been studied, by the political scientists and people interested in election transparency forever and ever. And suddenly,
Well, the reason
because
that
they're embarrassing.
They're saying that the election is over is because of these superdelegates. What do you think about the delegate system to begin with? Why do we need those?
The superdelegates are BS.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz said the superdelegates exist to suppress the grassroots so that the establishment doesn't have to face challenges from the grassroots.
It guarantees the
On that
elites
topic,
have more
why do we
vote.
have the Electoral College?
That one too.
For the same reason.
It's a guarantor against
Beat down the
the people
populists.
arising and electing a truly popular figure for reasons that go against the interests of the elites.
Seth Abramson in yesterday's Huffington Post has a article that explains the legal party rules and the political realities that underpin Bernie Sanders' insistence of staying into the convention. And there's some very interesting things in there because Hillary in 2008, and the letter exists, wrote to the superdelegates saying that they should support her rather than Barack Obama because she was more electable because the American people were not ready to elect an African American. But Hillary Clinton also used a clause in the party rules called the Fair Reflection Clause that said that even a pledged delegate can change their vote at the convention if it's a matter of conscience. And she said something like, if it's against their conscience to vote for someone who might not really be a Christian. I mean, all the things that Hillary said, Bernie should drop out, and it's not right for him to appeal the superdelegates as being more electable than I am. And these pledged delegates, they can't change their mind. Back in 2008, she was making the very same arguments. Well, I think that Obama not being a Christian compares in no way to the facts coming out daily that Hillary Clinton is a crook.
Okay, but we're about to wrap up here. You each got about 45 seconds. How are we going to fix the system, Mark?
We're going to fix the system by people insisting that this election has been a fraud. They need to protest. They need to talk about it. They need to march also, even at the convention, people need to have their voices heard at the convention. Given everything that's happened, the argument needs to be made that Bernie is the actual candidate. So I think that's the only thing that people can do, and that's all I can say.
Indeed, we need
45 seconds.
we need a velvet revolution to over.
You have 45 seconds now.
We need a velvet revolution. If it can't be done at the ballot box, we need to, in massive numbers, refuse to cooperate with a corrupt system. When that is done, then the plans are already there. This could be a parliamentary revolution. We can overturn Congress now. We don't have to wait till 2018 to throw out the bones, so to speak. And with we could do it. We could stand up, and the legislation Bernie's already written. It's right there. We can rationalize, fix our elections, and make them actually work.
45 seconds.
I feel like we need to have more protests, more civil disobedience, and more sticking together, honestly. If we all work together and all put all of our votes together and honestly just show our displeasure with the system, I think we'll get farther than any one of us will alone. So
Honestly.
sticking more with each other than going with the flow and going with the establishment. Don't let them convince you that you don't matter, because every one of us does.
Well said.
Together, there's nothing we can't accomplish, as Bernie said.
I want to thank everybody who watched the show tonight. I want to thank our caller Jill, our caller Rick. We're here.
Spell my name wrong.
We're here the first, third, and fifth Wednesday of the month. Starting our next show, June 15th, we will be at 7 o'clock live instead of 8. Our reruns are at 6 p.m. every Tuesday. I think one of the main things, I mean, even with all the dysfunction going on, just go and vote and try to be heard, more than just sitting on your couch and grumbling about it.
Hey, come out for the Granville 4th of July march, and march with Doug Smith. He's marching, he's running for Congress and is a Bernie supporter. You know, even if Bernie does not become president, he's still going to be the most powerful senator this country's ever seen.
He's definitely started a revolution.
Yeah.
If he becomes our president or not, this is going to go forward, I do believe.
Sometimes anger is a gift.
Well, you know, the correct use of anger is to draw boundaries to correct injustice.
Right. Exactly.
Some people use anger to try to intimidate people, put them down. That's a misuse of anger.
Anger is a rallying. An injustice has been committed.
Right.
We need to correct it for our own sake.
Oh yeah.
For our collective sake as well.
Well, in more education, I mean, that's always a big thing. If people know what they're voting for, then